Well, good morning, everybody. Good morning. Turn to somebody next to you and say, you look good today. All right. I think this is a good-looking group. Welcome to the Ark Church Magnolia. Now, I'm telling you, you're looking good, but I got to be honest with you. I've been staring at an empty building for 65 days. So we're just so excited that you're here worshiping with us today. We believe God is good and faithful, and He's building something right here. My name is Clayton Small. I'm the pastor here at the Ark Church Magnolia. My wife, Courtney, and I, we've spent 6 years at the Ark Church in Conroe, just down the road, although Magnolia is getting farther and farther away. 1488, you know what I'm talking about? It takes a minute. So we're so glad that you're here today. We believe God is going to do something great. As we get started this morning, I got to just start in a place that says, thank you to some people who have given their all so that we could be right here this morning. And so first up on my list this morning is I got to say thank you to our family. How many of you know you're standing on the shoulders of the people who came before you in your life? Their faith, their witness, their example, their leadership. And so we had a family who at 3 years old, a lady named Bobby Maloney walked into my dad's restaurant and invited them to church. And from that point on, my family's life was forever changed. So I'm incredibly grateful for people like some of you in the room who are inviting your friends and your neighbors, and you hadn't even been yet. You don't even know if that bald guy's crazy yet. You just saw him on Facebook somewhere. But you invited people here to be a part of something. You have no idea the power of what that could do in someone's life. We're so grateful for that. I'm thankful for our family who helped us get here today. I also want to thank some people. Lindsay Construction. Noble Lindsay, are you in the room? If you'd stand up, wave your hand. Also some of his guys, Robert Rose and Walt, they're going to be embarrassed that I did this, but they helped us over the last 65 days turn this building into a church, y'all. So this morning I had to go to my closet. This morning I had to go to my closet and pull out church, clothes and get out of the shorts. And, I had a hammer around here every day, but I didn't do much. So I'm excited that people are here so that we can move on to some things where God can just speak to hearts and minister to people. I'm so thankful for the Lindsays. They generously just provided so many things. We hired some contractors in to help us get this building ready to start a church. And but on top of that, Lindsay Construction, they donated all of their labor and all their supplies and materials to do this. So it's amazing when you feel the breath of God moving on something. He makes provision. And one of the things we're going to talk a lot about here at the Ark Church is when God puts a vision or a dream on your heart, He gives you the provision to carry it out. And we believe that's true in a church building, but it's not just about the church building. It's about the people that are coming inside of it. The church was never made to be a building. It's made to be a group of people who love God and serve Him, supply the needs of one another, connect in community. But we're grateful for the people who have helped us get to this point. I also want to thank the Ark Church in Conroe. The Ark Church in Conroe, my wife and I worked there for 6 years. We moved from Dallas, Texas, although I'm originally from Kansas City. I tried to move my Dallas, Texas wife to Missouri once. It lasted about 18 months because how many of y'all know you got to get that Texas girl right back to Texas. There's just something about it. I don't know why, though, because it's 100 bajillion degrees outside. We're the fourth Ark Church plant in the last 6 years, and Pastor Allen at the Ark Church in Conroe has a heart to start churches. So he brings guys in like me. We spend some time together. We catch the DNA, the heart, and the vision for what God is doing, and they so graciously and generously send us out. They say, take our name, take anything you've learned, and go help more people. And so we're so grateful for their support, their love, and encouragement. And exciting things today, too. We are Ark. ARC is a church planning network that we've partnered with. They've helped us. They gave us the tools and the playbook and the resources necessary to make it possible. We are ARC Church number 1078 starting today. So we're grateful for Ark. They gave us over $100,000 to help us start this church so that we could reach people in our community. Y'all, they don't even live in Texas. And they loving on you Texans. We got some people here today, too. We're so honored to have them from Life Church, Craig Rochelle's church. They've generously supported and prayed for us and coached us and talked to us. They're a resource to us, and we're so grateful that they would be willing to be right here in Magnolia, Texas. Y'all like Magnolia? I've been meeting people all over, and they're like, I can't wait for a church that I can drive 5 minutes to. Because how many of y'all know you've been commuting for a minute? When my wife and I moved here, she was really nervous, really, really worried. I said, honey, what is wrong? She goes, Target is 25 minutes away. I told her, honey, don't worry, it's coming. So it's an honor to be here. God has brought us to this place. And every time I think about it, I think about the fact that the reason the Lord is doing all of this is because he cares about someone like you. And he cares about a family like yours. And he cares about a community like this. One of the things that I love, people either love it or hate it. Some people I talk to, they're like, I moved to Magnolia to get away from it all, and then it all followed me. Everybody, when we told them we're moving to Magnolia, they all think I'm getting my big piece of acre heaven out here, you know? Like, no, those don't exist anymore. They're going away. But when we moved out here, I could sense in my spirit, in my heart, that there is a community that is growing and building. You look at the stats, you look at the numbers, people tell you thousands of homes right now. Right next to my neighborhood, 15,000 homes are about to be built. People are coming here. And anytime you see a movement like that, it's natural to think about the things in the natural, like what's going on, like what kind of Chick-fil-A's coming, you know, getting excited about all the things. But I can't help but stop when I'm looking at the homes being built and the buildings being built. I can't help but stop and think, God, what are you up to? You see, we're building homes and buildings and businesses and families and schools, but God is in the business of building lives. And I just think it's such an honor that we get to partner with him as a church to help people build their faith, help people build their family, help people build their friendships. I've talked to people over the last 6 months. If you took me up on coffee with a pastor ad that we've been running, I thought that's never going to work. People messaging all the time, let's get coffee. I thought, great, only one problem. I don't drink coffee. So if you can accept me as a pastor who doesn't drink coffee, I don't know if that takes away my pastor card. But I've met with people over the last 6 months from all walks of life. And almost every single one of them have one thing in common. When they're asking about the church, they want to know one thing. They want to know how they can connect with other people. I believe that's because we live in a world that is fast moving. I mean, Amazon stocked this place, y'all. It filled up. Packages were coming every day. UPS, FedEx, USPS, we know them by name because they helped us build this place right here, and it moved fast. I could order the night before, and the next morning I show up, and it's right there. Our world is moving fast, but there's one thing that has not changed, and that is our desire and our need for community and life-giving relationships and people we can connect with. I talk to grown men on the playground while I'm watching my kids, talking about how they went to work from home in the last couple of years after COVID, and they've been working from home, and they're more isolated than they've ever been before. I talk to moms who are looking for connections with their kids and people that they can connect with so that they can get their kids growing up in a community and with connections and resources that would bless them and help them. We're living in a community full of people who are looking for one another. That's what I love about what the Lord does. The church isn't a building, it's a people. Because it's a people, there's people here, and I believe God is drawing people. I'm proud of you for saying yes today, for coming to see a group of people and be with a group of people maybe you've never met before. Maybe your neighbor invited you, or maybe you found something on social media that just drew you here today. But I really believe this from the bottom of my heart. This whole thing started with a yes. In fact, some of the greatest things in life start with a yes. 24 years ago, I said yes to Jesus for the first time. My life was never the same again. My parents, they raised me up in church, but it took me a minute to get it. And when I finally got it, I realized that although I said yes, I didn't know the magnitude of the decision that I was making and where it would take me in life. And in fact, I'm standing right here in this moment with you because of what God did in my life. I believe many of you in the room can relate to some kind of yes in your life. Maybe you said yes to your spouse. I said yes to Courtney 12 years ago. I had hair back then, so that's why she would marry me. You know, I looked a lot better. But it's one of the greatest yeses I could have ever given. You know, there are things in our life that we say yes to that in the moment we're excited, we're encouraged, we're hopeful, but we have no idea the magnitude of what waits on the other side. And I think this is one of those moments. So everybody put your smile on because they're taking a lot of pictures today. You will be at 25-year anniversary of the Ark Church Magnolia. Your face is going to pop right up on that screen. So I hope you like what you wore today. And as we're doing that, it's not just a picture, it's a symbol of a God who cares enough about a group of people, of a people who are willing to say yes to be a part of something bigger than themselves that come together. We're building faith in our community. We're building families. We're building friendships. But one thing that my mom told me when I was 18 years old, I applied to a college I didn't get into. I thought I was going to get in, so I only applied to one. All of a sudden, my world got all turned upside down. I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I knew I was called to go to ministry. I just told my family, I'll just move to Africa, live in a hut, and be a missionary. My mom didn't like that idea. So I came home from a retreat, and laying on my bed that night was a card. She had written the verse that maybe you've heard before. Jeremiah 29:11 that says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you, not to harm you, to give you a hope and a future." And it was right there at that moment in time in my life that I knew that ministry was the call of God on my life, and I would say yes again. You see, whether you realize it or not, God is in the business of asking us these questions. Will you be with me? Will you join me? Will you be a part of what I'm doing? And all that we have to do is bring to the table a simple yes that says, yes, I'm all in. And so as we start a series this morning, we're going to start a series called What Matters Most. You know, I'm going to be honest with you, okay? This is just how we roll at the Ark Church Magnolia, but we're just real around here. We're just going to share it to you like it is. I have no idea how you preach a first message of a very brand new First Church. I've been praying and asked the Lord for 8 months. How do you package a whole lifetime of stuff into one moment? And I felt like the Lord laid in my heart as I was praying that He wanted to send one word to you. And that is, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you because your presence here today says something about the Spirit inside of you. Maybe you've been looking for church for a long time. Maybe this is the first time you've been to church. Maybe you went to your granny's church growing up, but it's been a hot minute and life has taken its toll. And you find yourself here following a mailer, hoping that there's not some weird people in this building when you walk in behind the ag barn of Magnolia High School. Don't forget to say hi to Billy on your way out. He talks to me every morning. My wife wonders why I talk back, but that's just how it's going to be. You followed something, a willingness to say yes. He's proud of you because there are men in the room right now who are willing to put their family first by bringing them to a place that could put deposits inside of their spirit that leave a legacy for generations to come. There are women inside of this room right now who've been crying out to the Lord in prayer for their family, and they found a place, and they're coming here looking for a place for their family to connect and grow spiritually. There is a God in heaven who is proud of the seeds that you are sowing into the ground right now. You see, I talk about a picture 25 years down the road, and you're like, you don't even know what's going to happen 25 years down the road. You're right, I don't, but I know one thing. I know that we serve a God who is faithful. And over in Scripture, when you read about people in the Bible, when they say yes to Him, regardless of the resources that they have, regardless of the things that have happened to them in their life, or how they thought things should go but didn't go, or where they ended up that they thought they would never be, the people who said yes found God to be faithful in depositing seeds in their life. I believe God is going to help you grow. I believe God is going to strengthen you. But beyond that, I believe He's going to use you to help build a future and life of other people. I'll never forget one of the first meetings I had with someone at Sweetwater's Coffee right down the road. We sat down and he began to ask this one simple question: do you really think God could use me? And I'll never forget walking out of that saying, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. Because there are people in the world that we live in that are asking one simple yet very profound question, which is, does my life matter? Does my life have value? What can I do? And I'm here to tell you, as we start this church, we're not going to cover our ground today. You're going to walk out and say, but he didn't say this, he didn't say, we're not going to cover the world today, but we will cover this. There is a God who wants to invite you to join Him in the work that He's already doing. We live in a community that has full of great churches. I've met most of the pastors. If you're from another church, we hope that you will stay at your church, connect in your church. If this isn't your church and you walk out of here and this isn't for you, we pray that God would help you find a home. We're not here to compete. We're here to be a part of what God is doing in our community, and we believe that we're better together. And as we invite you to join in on what God is doing, it's literally a simple question of a yes or no answer. Would you join your faith with a group of people so that at the end of the day, you can be strengthened? Some of you have been praying for a church for a while. I've met a lot of people, and a lot of the people, they're like, I've just been praying that I don't have to drive to Katy anymore. I've just been praying that I could find a place that my teenagers could find friends so that when they go into the big world of high school, they can have an established community that would help root them and ground them in a way that gives them a firm foundation. No promises, it's day one, we're a church plant, but September, October, at the end of September, October, we're going to be starting our youth ministry. God has blessed us with a building day one. We're not loading in and out of a high school. We're so incredibly blessed. That means right away we're going to get right to it. We got to create a place for young people, for the next generation to connect with God. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We're building a future for people. And so we're glad that you're a part of this today and that you're here in this moment. I want to tell you a story. As we talk about what matters most, and we talk about saying yes to the things of God, I got to tell you a story of when I went on vacation several years ago with my family. I went to the only place you actually go. I had a pastor this week call me from the Ark Church, Salina, Kansas, and he said, I just want to encourage you and get you ready for your first day and let you know sometimes some things happen. A day before they had church, their very first launch, they got like 20 inches of snow. And he's like, so just be careful. You never know what will happen. I said, thanks for the encouraging word. But have you been to Houston, Texas? And so I wasn't praying for no snow. I was praying, dear Lord, please don't let it go over 101, please. But if you're going anywhere, even if you're from Houston and you're going on vacation, you want to go to the beach, right? Am I right? So we go to the beach and we're down there with our family and we show up by the poolside and there's one of those guys doing excursions right on the side of the pool and he sells us a good deal, you know? And he says, I'm going to take you scuba diving, not snorkeling. Snorkeling's on top of the water. Scuba diving, you're all in. And he pushes you in the pool with your scuba gear on and says, if you can not drown, then we'll take you to the ocean. So, well, thankfully, I passed that test. He took us out on a boat in the middle of the ocean. We jumped off and we go scuba diving. He said, I just got a couple rules. 1, breathe. 2, stay out of the coral. Don't touch it. It'll kill it. And so, okay, 2 rules. That's pretty simple. I'll jump in and go. And so jumped in. First thing that happened is I sank straight to the bottom. And I am sitting on the bottom floor, literally trying to swim and go, but I cannot get off the sand. And for 45 minutes of that tour, everybody is about 20 feet up above me swimming. I'm looking up like, must be nice. And I'm going along, and my knees are starting to get blooded. I'm scraping up in the coral, and it's just not working for me at all. And I'm thinking, this is a miserable experience. I'm not getting back in the water again. And so they have this little button on your vest. You press it, and it inflates your vest, and it pops you to the surface. So I pressed the eject button, got in the boat, and I get out, and I said, that was terrible. I'm not doing that again. And he goes, well, hang on just a minute. Hang on. And he goes, oh. Don't tell me in the middle of the ocean on a boat. And he takes my vest and he reaches in and he starts pulling sandbags out of my life vest. I'm like, what are you trying to do to me? He proceeds to tell me that the tour right before me had a 50-pound girl they couldn't get to go down far enough. So naturally, we just decided we're going to fill her full of sand weights so she sinks. And they left the weights in the vest. And he took them out and said, would you like to go now? I said, you bet. So I jumped in the water, we scuba dived, and we were going around, and the first thing he does is we group up, and he has one of those underwater cameras, and he takes our picture, and then he points right behind us. I'm like, there he was, in real life, Bruce the shark. 6-foot-long shark right behind us. Okay, last service it was 5, but it doesn't really matter. It's close enough. For the next 45 minutes, he followed us around. Some of y'all are like, no, I'm out. Some of you guys in the room, you're like, that's better than Shark Week right there. And for the next 45 minutes, I had this encounter and this experience that I'm preaching about today, that I got pictures that I show my buddies about. That was an incredible experience, but it all depended upon one thing, me being willing to say yes, even though what had happened to me before is the thing that I said I would never do again. Maybe you came to church today, you're like, I told the last time that I wasn't going back to church. Maybe you've been somewhere and you got hurt by a church, and I can't be everything for everyone, but I'll tell you this. I apologize for ways that churches may have hurt you in the past. We want you to find a place of life. God's people aren't perfect, but we do want you to find a place of life. But what I realized in that moment is if the weights had never come out of the vest, I would have missed out on one of the greatest experiences in Cancun, Mexico that I could have ever had. If that's what happens when we're scuba diving, how much more in life? In life, we get to a season and a place where sometimes we realize there have been some weights and some sandbags and some things that have caused us to sink farther than we ever thought we would go. And we start asking a question that maybe we don't verbalize with our mouth, but we do verbalize with our spirit that says, what really matters most? What is it that will help me get to where I'm trying to go? What is it that's going to bring life back into my family? What is it that can restore my marriage? What is it that can help me get going? How do I get these weights off? And the answer is very simply, Jesus asking you, are you willing to say yes? I want to share a story in the Bible, but before I do, our founding verse is Hebrews chapter 11, verse 7, which says, by faith, Noah built an ark for the saving of his household. I love this passage because it's about a man who was willing to say yes. 8 months ago, this church was made up of 4 people, me, my wife, my 4-year-old, and my 2-year-old. You can imagine how long those sermons were. It was a group of people willing to say yes. Over the last 6 months, there's been a launch team. We're calling our serve team here at the Ark Church, and I want to give a shout out to them. This is the first time they ever played together, y'all. This is the first time they're greeting and parking cars, so be nice to them on the way out because we figuring it all out. It's day one. A group of people willing to say yes. And I look now on this side, a launch team of over 100 people who are just willing to say yes. And I think 8 months ago, there was nothing. All people did was say yes. The same way that Noah did in the Bible. Noah built an ark because God asked him to do something. Noah didn't know how it would work out. Noah wasn't sure what his friends were going to say. Noah wasn't sure if the ark would even float, by golly. But he was willing to say yes when God asked him to do. Can I tell you what happened when he did? His entire household was saved. I love that passage because it says there's an active faith to this side. I think one of the challenges of Christianity in our world today can be this idea that I'll say yes, but does that even really mean anything for my life? Like, do I have to go all in? Do I have to be a part? And there's this active faith that Noah had that he built something. And I love that because we're building something here today. Your presence here is building something today. You walk out of here today, there's something different about you than when you came in. And when you go to work tomorrow, there's something different about our community. You're building something. And there's a faith to that. And Noah did that, and we're standing here today because he did. I think about a guy in the Bible I'm going to share with you over the next couple weeks as we talk through this series of what matters most. His name is Nehemiah. What I love about Nehemiah is that he was willing to say yes to building something that God was going to use. He said yes, but it didn't come without its challenges. The mistake would be to think, like, if I say yes, it makes it all easy, but that's not the case. You see, Nehemiah said yes, and often, if I'm honest, saying yes isn't the hard part. It's the walking it out. Saying yes isn't the challenge. It's the how do I get to a place where I can even say yes with the resolve in my heart and my spirit that it's going to be different this time? That, hey, my family, we're going to go back to church. I know we're busy. I know we just moved here and we don't know people yet. And we're trying to find our place. But no matter what, I'm going because I'm going to say yes and I'm going to build my faith and I'm going to focus on what matters most. You see, Nehemiah had some things that he put in place, I believe, that if we take and steal from people in the Bible, they weren't perfect. What I love about the Bible is full of a bunch of people who didn't have it all figured out, yet God used their yes anyway. And Nehemiah was one of those people. And he came in and he asked a question. He says, the people of God. So let me give you a little background context. The people of God had been in exile. They'd been cast out of their land. The Babylonians had come and taken over them, but not long after that, the Persians conquer the Babylonians. All that just to say they weren't at home anymore. And they're not at home, which means they're away from their church. They're away from the temple of God. And the temple had been destroyed in that time. Some people had gone back to their home to rebuild it. It didn't look the same. It wasn't as pretty. It didn't feel the same. Maybe you're coming to church today and you're like, man, I used to have a church in my last town where we lived, and it just doesn't feel the same yet. I'm waiting for it to feel the same. Can I tell you, Nehemiah went back to his home, and it didn't feel the same. It wasn't right yet. But he said, God, I'll be used by you to do something here and rebuild the walls around the temple. And so I want to read to you this morning from Nehemiah chapter 1. Here's what he says. He asked the question, they said to me, the remnant, the people in exile, the people who were actually not in exile, they were back in Jerusalem, their hometown. They were remaining there in the province. They had survived the exile, and they give this report. They say, everything's in great trouble and shame. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down, and its gates are destroyed by fire. In other words, they give Nehemiah a bad report. Things aren't what they were. Things aren't what they should be. There's great shame in the land. People are in despair, and people are in a place where they've lost hope because we can't even go to church and worship in the temple the way we used to. Things look different for them. And Nehemiah gets this word, but what I love about Nehemiah is there's a spirit inside of him that no matter what the circumstances of his life are, he chooses to believe in faith that God can build something better than what he can see with his eyes. I'll tell you a quick story. My mom went to get the eye doctor in like 3rd grade, and she went into the eye doctor and came out, and the eye doctor gave her big, thick glasses. You know what I'm talking about? The thick ones. And she came out and she looked at what was a tree, and she said to her mom, "What are those things, those little things on the tree?" And my granny looked at her and said, "You mean the leaves?" It was the first time she could see that the leaves were in individual form and not in one big blob. Her perspective, her eyesight changed. And when I read Nehemiah, I'm reading a story of our lives. People getting bad news and bad reports, and people hearing things that are discouraging, that cause them to be in despair, or depressed, or set back. The shame rides in. And what Nehemiah does is he has the ability that even though things have this distorted look on them, he starts seeing things that are not yet as though they are. He has a faith glasses that he can put on, and he sees what God can do and what God can build, regardless of what happens in the natural, regardless of what everyone else is looking at. And Nehemiah, the guy who says yes, the reason he can say yes is because he knows the God that he serves. I'm going to read the rest of this passage, and I'll unpack that just a little bit. As soon as Nehemiah heard these words, he sat down and he wept and he mourned for days, and he continued fasting and praying before the God of heaven. And he said, "O Lord God of heaven, the great and awesome God who keeps covenant and steadfast love with those who love him and keep his commandments, let your ear be attentive and your eyes open to hear the prayer of your servant, that I now pray before you day and night before the people of Israel, your servants, confessing the sins of the people which we have sinned against you. Even I and my father's house," he said, "have sinned." In other words, he's owning his part in the mess. He's acknowledging, he is acknowledging the reality of the world that they are facing and why they are where they are. And in verse 7, he says, "We acted corruptly. We haven't kept your commandments, the statutes, or the rules. Everything you told Moses, we didn't do it." But he said, "Remember the word that you commanded your servant Moses, saying, if you're unfaithful, I will scatter you." And in fact, they were scattered. But listen to this line in verse 9. "But if you return to me and you keep my commandments, if you follow me and do them, though the outcasts are in the uttermost parts of heaven," you've been scattered all over the land, he says, "from there I will gather them and bring them to the place that I have chosen to make my name dwell there." I love that line. We've been praying and asking God to gather people who have been scattered and bring them to a place that they can call home. Why? So that he can write his name all over us. A place where we can fear his name and his name would dwell. "They are your servants and your people, whom you have redeemed by your great power and by your strong hand. O Lord, let your ear be attentive to the prayer of your servant and to the prayer of your servants who delight to fear your name. And give success to your servant today and grant him mercy in the sight of this man." I love what happens because Nehemiah was discouraged and he sat down and he prayed and he cried. But just because he sat down, it didn't mean he stayed down. He got up. There was a bold faith about him that says, "I am discouraged, but there's hope. Things are torn down, but they can be rebuilt." And so Nehemiah is answering the call to go back to Jerusalem and begin to rebuild the temple, rebuild the church. And for those of you who are coming today, maybe there are some areas of your life that have been broken down, and you're literally here today asking God the question, can you put the pieces back together again? And literally, Nehemiah's faith was in such a place that he said yes to God because he believed that God could put everything back together again. He said yes to God because he believed that no matter what it looks like, God can still do something good. And I asked the question in my own life, how could Nehemiah get to a place where he would do that in his life? And I want to give you two things this morning that he did. The first one is that he remembered what God had done in his life. He gets bad news. I get bad news. You want to know what I talk about? The bad news. He gets bad news. You know what he talks about? The first words out of his mouth: "God, you are great and you are awesome. God, your steadfast love endures. God, your faithfulness is so good." I'm be real. I'm a preacher and I don't do that all the time. There was something inside of him that remembered who God was. And can I tell you, if you're in a position where you're asking God to do something more, you're asking God to help your family, you're asking God to help you find a faith family, a church home, then can I tell you, start with remembering what God has already done in your life. Here's why. It will build your faith for where you're going. When you remember what he has done, it gives you the power inside to believe for what he can do. When you remember what he's done, you're like, but I haven't been to church in a long time. I don't really know what God has done. Let's take a pulse. Did you ever go to your granny's church growing up? You watched someone in your life share their faith. You looked at them, you thought, there's joy in them. God has caused you to rub shoulders with people who have blessed you or encouraged you. I'm not saying it's all perfect and butterflies and roses. I'm just saying there is a God out there who has done something in your life, and all you have to do is remember it. What it does is it activates the seed inside of you that was deposited. Maybe you didn't even know it, but maybe you went to a church camp when you were a teenager, and you didn't even know it at the time, but God was putting a seed inside there. The next few years were a little rough, but today you're sitting in this place, and I'm telling you, when you begin to remember what God has done in your life, it activates that seed, and all of a sudden, he starts quickening your spirit, and all of a sudden, you start sensing hope rising up inside of you again, and you start sensing the joy of the Lord coming back to you, and you're sitting in a seat that didn't exist 3 days ago, actually, and you're sitting right here, right now, and the Lord says, I want to build your faith. All you have to do is remember. It's hard to remember sometimes, okay? So I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. When my 2-year-old was probably about 7 or 8 months, my wife was holding him one day. He's cute, y'all, but I'm his dad, so y'all be the judge of that, okay? She's holding him, and she looks at me, and men, you know what I'm talking about. Like that look in the eyes, dead set sincerity, all seriousness, and she says, honey, I want a baby. And I'm looking at her thinking, have you lost your mind? Do you know what's in your hands right now? A 7-month-old baby. I'm thinking, don't you know that's a baby? She goes, no, honey, I want a baby. My man mind's not computing right here, okay? I'm thinking, what are you talking about? This is a baby. No, I want a baby. First thing that comes to my mind is, have you forgotten that we haven't slept in 8 months? Have you forgotten how much the diapers cost? But there was something inside of her, wired inside of her, that I had not yet clicked inside of me. And because she had a different feel about it, there was a strength about her for something more, when inside of me, I've already thinking, have we forgotten? You see, sometimes in our faith, the same thing can happen. Let me unpack that a little bit. Sometimes we forget what God has done because we're so distracted by what's right in front of us. And I want to encourage you as you come back to church maybe, or maybe you're finding a home for the first time, I would encourage you, just remember something God has done. And can I tell you that if you can't remember one single thing, I will tell you something he's done. You see, he crawled right up on a cross to die for your sins so that he could take the death away from your life. And God raised him from the dead. And because God raised him from the dead, we can live again. Your family can have a future again. Your faith can have a future again. Your friendships can have life and vibrancy to them again because of what Jesus Christ did on the cross. You have something to remember. And when you remember it, it will activate a faith inside of you that will strengthen you and encourage you for the days ahead. The last thing Nehemiah did that I love is he responded. He didn't look around at everybody else and say, you going to go? No. You going to go? No. You going to be there this Sunday? No. Nehemiah said, I'm going to go back and build the wall. And he got the faith and the courage to go ask the king, and we'll unpack this next week, but he goes back to the city and he begins to rebuild. In fact, they rebuilt it so fast, everybody was amazed. Why? Because Nehemiah responded. There's this piece of our faith that requires a response of our heart. I want to tell you a story that forever changed my life. When I was 18 years old, I went to a Christian concert in downtown Kansas City. I was with a group of people, and because I was with this group of people, they were late. And we were flying downtown, and there was nowhere to park in the venue, so they made us park in this dark alley. And as they parked in this dark alley, we're with a bunch of teenage girls. They're all running out, freaking out, and we're going down the aisle, and I'm just thinking, we are late. And if you've ever been late, you know what I'm talking about. You just look at your watch a million times. I don't really know why we do that. We already know that we're late. What does it matter anymore? I kept looking at my watch, and I'm bolting out of this dark alley in the middle of downtown Kansas City. And as we get out of the aisle, I noticed that there's a homeless man sitting right on the corner. And the second I walked by, he gave me that look. And you know the look that I'm talking about. You've been met with it before. And he looked me dead in the eyes, and I just remember that feeling in that moment. And in my immaturity and in my youthfulness, I didn't know how to respond. And so I literally looked down at my watch that I just looked at seconds before. And I'll never forget, because then I just walked right on by, and I went inside to a Christian concert with 3,000 people. And in there, I'm worshiping with 3,000 people thinking, what did I just do? How could I don't know what I was supposed to have done, but I do know this, that I walked right by a person. Jesus was sitting right on the corner. 3,000 Christians gathered. Hoorah! But what if Jesus was sitting right there on the corner? The whole time, that's all I could think of. I paid $65 for this ticket to sit here and think about what I should have done and didn't do. I know this is a little dramatic, but it's a true story. I walked out, and as we came out of the concert that night, there were police lights and lighting up the whole city block, and there's police crime scene tape all around. But there was actually a hit-and-run accident. And the man that was sitting on the corner passed away about 10 minutes after I met him. And I just want to pull you here for a minute so that you understand. At 18 years old, I'm sitting there processing this, thinking, God, what we do with our life matters. Having the right priorities and having the strength to do what matters most in the moments when God needs us to focus the most is important. And I didn't walk away discouraged that day. I was a teenager. But I did walk away that day, and I made a decision in my heart that I've never forgotten. It's why we're standing right here today. And that is, you never know. You never know who's sitting next to you that needs life. You never know what people need, the joy or the hope that they're looking for. And the question on the table is, when you say yes to God, are you willing to help other people? We're starting a church. We're going to gather a bunch of people to worship Jesus, but that's not what it's just about. There's more than that. We're going to walk out of here, and we're going to take Jesus to the streets and to the people. You're going to meet people at your work, and maybe you're thinking, God can't use me. You don't know my past. You don't know where I've been, what I've done. No, that doesn't matter anymore because of what Jesus has done for you. And he wants to use you to bless and encourage and strengthen and give life. And as I think about that story, I'm reminded that like Nehemiah, we can respond with a simple yes.